lot of news over the past few days. What are your thoughts about President Trump's decision to intervene in the Middle East conflict?
As a 24-year Army veteran, married to a 30-year Army veteran from a family of veterans, I would say we've had successive presidents from Clinton all the way through President Trump talk about Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. This is finally a time where we actually made action on that. So I think that action is going to keep both people in the Middle East, people in the United States, and people around the world safer. We all agree that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. And quite honestly, the sleeper cells and the numbers of people on the terror watch list that came across our southern border under the Biden administration's open border policy is just as great a threat as anything that we're seeing in the Middle East.
Do you support continued military action, and do you think that Congress should have a larger role under the War Powers Act?
Well, let me just say that President Biden did 3 strikes in Afghanistan in August of 2021. The strike that he sent without notifying Congress killed 10 civilians. It was a UN vehicle. 7 of those were children, and Congress was not notified. So the president has the authority to have a strike, a military strike, under the War Powers Act, and also under Article 2, and also there is still an existing authorization for use of military force, AUMF, in 2007 that was addressing Iran because of its support and harboring of al-Qaeda. So the president has the constitutional authority to do this. Again, had we not sent pallets and billions of dollars in money to Iran, had President Biden not allowed Iran to skirt sanctions, those other type of soft levers that we use to achieve results may have been effective, but they were not. We know that Iran was on the cusp, on the precipice of developing a nuclear weapon that they could put on the tip of a missile, and that would have been catastrophic for the world. Everybody agrees with that, so I think it's finally time that we took words and put them into action, and I do think that what President Trump did was a necessary action.
You had mentioned sleeper cells. What do you say to constituents who are concerned about a potential strike in the United States from a lone wolf situation?
Well, we certainly saw strikes in the United States. People have forgotten 9/11. I have not forgotten 9/11. For those of us who watched it unfold the day that it happened, we know that there are bad actors. We know that there was a shooting in Colorado from someone who had overstayed their visa, and people died in that attack. So, what we have when we have people come into our country with no vetting, and just releasing them into the country. We had over 1.7 million known gotaways during the Biden administration. We also had unknown gotaways, people that we don't know who they were because the cartels didn't want us and they did not want us to know. So it certainly is a concern. There are provisions that we changed after 9/11 that should help us with that, but I think it's important that we're all vigilant. Not discriminatory, but that we're all vigilant. We're looking for things that could harm U.S. citizens.
I'm going to switch topics now. A new report shows Iowa importers paid triple the amount in tariffs this past April compared to last year. Are these trade policies that we've seen so far helping or hurting Iowa families and businesses?
Well, what we've done in the reconciliation bill in passing the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act for reauthorization, that is absolutely critical to being able to help Iowa manufacturers, Iowa farmers, Iowa small business owners. So those things are going to be very important to go forward. We know that tariffs are used as a negotiating tactic, and I can also tell you that manufacturers, farmers, and small business owners, they were the first to tell me over a decade ago about the egregious trade practices of the Chinese Communist Party, whether it's manipulating currency, whether it is skirting around provisions, sending something to another country, then to the United States, or whether it is not allowing for commodities, whether it's corn, soy, or pork, or beef, having them stay in a port, going rancid, then refusing shipments. So then the farmer both loses the crop and the payment. So it was farmers and small business owners in Iowa who told me about the egregious practices of the Chinese Communist Party. We want to have expansive trade. We want to have new markets. Secretary Rollins is going to go on 6 trade missions to 6 different countries. So that's going to be just as important as addressing a tariff issue. So I think that they will be short-lived as we negotiate through the tariff issue, but also critically important to pass Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, which we've done in the House, and critically important to look at other markets and new products and new countries for the United States.
I'm going to ask debate over potential cuts to SNAP and Medicaid. What do you say to Iowans who worry that these changes could force them to choose between food, medicine, and rent?
Well, I would say that, certainly I understand people's concern, especially with all the lies and the myths that the Democrat Party has spewed about what we have done in Medicaid and what we have done and passed in the House. Even the New York Times said that they were exaggerating the number of people that may be affected by this. We have looked at waste, fraud, and abuse in the Medicaid program. We are strengthening and preserving Medicaid for those who is intended. So the things that we have done in the House, I will tell you the vast majority of people in the United States, including Democrats, as well as Republicans and independents, all agree that illegal immigrants should not be on Medicaid. It's not for whom it was intended. And yes, it is happening, because if it's not happening, the Congressional Budget Office wouldn't have scored it as a savings. They agree with having community engagement. So work, going to school, or volunteering 80 hours a month. If you are a person without disabilities, if you're a 30-year-old male, which males in the past have not been on Medicaid, most people agree that you ought to be doing something to help yourself and to help your community in exchange for other taxpayers paying for those benefits. And very simply, if you're ineligible for Medicaid, under the Biden administration, states were not allowed to remove people ineligible. They weren't allowed to check. But if you're ineligible, you should not be on Medicaid. That's not a hard concept. It absolutely happens. And you're taking away money that would go to somebody who's on disability or services that they need. So every state has a list of people that are in the traditional Medicaid population wanting to get services. And if you're ineligible, you're taking away those funds and those services for people who need it the most and who are most vulnerable. So those things, I've got a bill, the Medicaid Improvement Act, which says states have to verify addresses. You would be amazed, and there has been reporting on this in the Wall Street Journal referencing our bill, that when a person moves from one state to another state, if they don't inform the state they're moving from that they're no longer on Medicaid, need to be on Medicaid in that state, states are now paying per member per month, money going to the insurance company. This money is not going to a child. It is not going to a person with disability. It's not going to a pregnant woman. It's going to the insurance company, and it's over $100 billion in improper payments. So tackling waste, fraud, and abuse within the Medicaid system is going to preserve and strengthen that system for the people it was most intended.
Where does that bill stand right now?
That bill is incorporated into the Reconciliation Act, and we have Accelerating Kids' Access to Care. It's another one of my bills. We had already passed it through Energy and Commerce last year. It is in the reconciliation bill, and that's a bill that says if a child has to travel to another state, another specialist for care, that the provider should be fast-tracked. We've had children's lives put in peril because it took 6-9 months, a year, for one state to approve of a provider in another state.
Last question for you. Very hyper-local. Some residents in Johnson County say out-of-state landlords are raising rents and reducing services. Would you support federal protections or oversight for manufactured home communities?
Well, I think what's really important is that when people ask me about a bill or legislation, I have to see the bill or legislation before I make any comment whether I agree or not. So it sounds like this is a local issue that is impacting people, so I'm sure that our state legislators and senators are working on that. But on a federal level, let's look at legislation before we comment on a hypothetical. So I'd like to see what it is, what it does, and what are the intended consequences, but more importantly, what are the unintended consequences? Could the unintended consequence be that you make housing less affordable and less available? And I think that's just as important to address the issue.
Thank you for your time today.
Thank you.